As Star Wars fans eagerly awaited the release of the Ahsoka show, many fans took to social media to express their excitement to see the return of characters like Ahsoka, Sabine, Hera, and Ezra. Many people speculated that this Ahsoka show would be something like a Rebels Season 5. And with the show's release, fans that hadn't seen the Clone Wars and Rebels watched them for the first time. Also, die-hard Star Wars fans rewatched the shows. So with all these fans watching the two most popular Star Wars animated shows, there were lots of discourse on each. A solid amount of people expressed the opinion that Star Wars Rebels is better than the Clone Wars. Initially, I was shocked, because the Clone Wars was always considered the best Star Wars show to exist. So after lots of consideration, I realized that Rebels is the only competition for the throne of peak Star Wars television. Shows like Obi-Wan, Book of Boba Fett, and Andor aren't close, and while The Mandalorian was great, it never even came close to the top of the mountain, the peak of Star Wars television, which is the 7 seasons of the Clone Wars. Rebels is the only other show, besides the Clone Wars, that poses the depth, the character work, and the true magic of what makes Star Wars amazing. So now in this video, we'll dive deep into the Clone Wars and Rebels show. This video essay will explore many aspects of each show. Now what I do want to make clear right away is that this isn't a standard comparison video. This video will mostly tackle the positives and some negatives of each show. Rather than come to a conclusion at the end of the video on what show is the victor, my goal is to present an enormous amount of information that will help each viewer decide on which show is better. So let's jump right into the first topic of this video. So, to start, each show is led by one man, and that is Dave Filoni. And while there are many similarities between the two shows, this section is about what story the two shows were trying to tell. So let's start with the Clone Wars. And, well, the story this show is trying to tell is right in its name. The galaxy is at its scariest moment. There's unrest and confusion that surrounds all of the people in the galaxy. The Clone Wars is one of the few, but arguably the largest, most unsettling and disturbing times in the galaxy. For 3 miserable years, the entire galaxy was in chaos, as the war made the Jedi lose their principles and morals for the sake of victory. The Senate collapsed itself into debt and had little time and no money to pay it back. The Separatists surrounded the Republic, and corruption was making the Galactic Republic cripple at an alarming rate. For nearly 3 years, the war was at a complete stalemate, as no side truly got the upper hand. The only thing that was actually happening was resources being depleted and millions of deaths. This dark shadow that plagued the entire galaxy could only be cured by heroes. And that's how the show of the Clone Wars was born. Starting in 1977, fans knew of the Clone Wars. Many thought the prequels would explore them, but they really didn't. The prequels just showed the beginning of the war and then skipped to the end. But there was a difference between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. The Jedi had changed. While the Jedi had not been the glowing beams of holy light that they were in the High Republic, they were still an order bounded by principles and morals. But Revenge of the Sith showed Jedi as soldiers. The Jedi were cruel animals, so desperately trying to claw themselves to victory without any regard for what was happening to the galaxy and to their sacred order. There was certainly a lot to explain in this show. A major character that this show decided to focus itself on was Anakin. The Clone Wars initially started off covering many Jedi and many adventures, but Dave reeled it in after a few seasons, as we then mainly focused on Anakin, Ahsoka, and Obi-Wan. This show had a goal of deepening our understanding of why things happened the way they did in Revenge of the Sith, specifically the important events that led up to it. There's so much that happens in wars, and because the prequels just jumped around it, this show was able to explore the war with less restrictions than if the Clone Wars was heavily shown in the prequels. Now, what was Star Wars Rebels' purpose? What was that show trying to achieve? Well, as we have clearly seen, when some important event is talking about in a movie, usually we get a show about it. In A New Hope, Luke talks about joining a rebellion. I know as Star Wars fans, we just throw around the word rebellion because we're just so used to it in Star Wars. But you gotta understand how important these rebellions are. Rebellions are huge and have enormous amounts of people that work and fight for one cause. So when Luke talks about the rebellion, it seems that the rebellion is extremely well known throughout the galaxy. If somehow a farmer on a desert somehow knows what this rebellion is, clearly there's a story to be told. This show's purpose is to show the origins of the rebellion. Again, Dave picked a good show to make because we know how the rebellion ended, of course in victory. But what we haven't seen is how the rebellion started, who founded it, and what were the struggles that it encountered. Now these shows also do something wildly different from each other. The Rebels show focuses on a small squadron of people, while the Clone Wars mainly focuses on Anakin and Ahsoka. A large part of the show is about the war and the Jedi as a whole. Rebels takes a very zoomed-in approach to the conflict, as we spend more time doing character work and being more involved in the nitty-gritty of each conflict, while the Clone Wars takes a step back and zooms out. And it's not as if it doesn't do a lot of character work, but it may seem like that because the scale of the show is so much grander than the scale of Rebels. You have to remember that Clone Wars is 7 seasons, so while it may seem as if there's an equal amount of character work being done, you have to remember that the Clone Wars had 3 more seasons than Rebels. A way to think about it is, Rebels shows a progression of a family fighting for the same cause, and Clone Wars does the same. Except the family fighting for good in Rebels consists of a half dozen people. And in the Clone Wars, it's about 1,000 Jedi. Maybe even more. There's a noticeable difference in the focuses of the show. And I don't want to say that the Clone Wars show is more important, but it certainly had so much more that it had to tell than Rebels did. Not only that, George gave Dave another major conflict to deal with as he wanted Maul to return. Rebels didn't really require anything specific. Dave could play around with the show and make moments fast or make the show slower at times, however he wanted to make it because he really had free control. All he had to explain is why these characters aren't around in the original trilogy. And that's a very tough challenge to write around. What do I mean by intensity? Well, when watching Clone Wars and Rebels, how much did the show, through its plot, put people on the edge of their seats? How Clone Wars and Rebels kept people hooked and kept people worried for our heroes was by making it seem like the threat was so large and so difficult to overcome. The Clone Wars show truly excels at this. Of course, it's mostly because of Palpatine. With 133 episodes of the show, we really got to see Palpatine's master plan in effect. We also got to see how the Jedi slowly started to get some dangerous vibes from Palpatine. In Revenge of the Sith, the Jedi have seemed to discover that maybe Palpatine isn't the great man that he is said to be. Of course, they have no idea that he's a Sith, but they do think something is off about him. They do not have any suspicions about him in Attack of the Clones, and we get to see why the suspicions slowly developed through the Clone Wars. I think the first time they thought Palpatine was not putting the people of the Republic first is when the encounter with the Zillo Beast happened. When they figured out that there was a Zillo Beast lying under the surface, Palpatine wanted him to be terminated right away. This shocked the Jedi as that is unethical. However, once he wasn't able to be killed, but instead was harmed and unconscious, the Jedi recommended that he be transported somewhere where he could live out his life in nature because he was one of the last of his species. However, Palpatine disagreed with that idea. Rather, he requested that the Zillo Beast be transported to Coruscant for studying. After Palpatine couldn't clone him, he was killed, but not before the Zillo Beast escaped and killed thousands. The Jedi began to lose trust and faith with Palpatine's decision-making and morals on this day. Palpatine always made the audience of the Clone Wars feel on the edge of their seats. Some intense political arcs that happened was when the Blue Rodian, who was acquaintance to Padme, died of an assassination. Everything felt intense in that arc as Padme went to investigate the death of many people close to her. This introduced political corruption in the Senate, which most definitely adds to the intensity of the show. Another incident was the Order 66 chip activating early. We of course knew that this wouldn't lead to any significant repercussions for Palpatine, but the Jedi were made aware. However, Yoda didn't really seem to care. Yoda basically says this is something they will keep an eye on. That was a really interesting arc because I, along with the whole fandom, was rooting for Fives to bring out the truth about Order 66 and about these chips, but it never did happen. The most influential political event happened in Season 6. Let's all be honest, as Clone Wars fans, the 6th season was a letdown compared to its previous seasons. However, that does not mean that all the arcs in this season were bad. This season included one of my favorite arcs that I will discuss for a few minutes. This is the Banking Clan arc. Many people have gone as far to say that this arc was useless and they would have rather these episodes were taken out of the show for some other story. I totally disagree. This arc adds to the control that Palpatine easily seizes from the galaxy. We find out at the start of the arc that the banks are out of money. We find out that the Separatists have not been paying their interest rates while the Republic has. While this might seem to be a boring plot, this turns out to be a very big key to Palpatine's success. So with the banks out of money, Rush Clovis gets appointed to run the entire banking clan. However, the Republic was hesitant to appoint him. Clovis had a shady past that mostly involved businesses with Separatists. However, he does get appointed, and the former leaders of the banking clan are arrested for the crimes they committed by basically funding the Separatists while also making the Republic go poor. Clovis wants neutrality. He wants the Separatists to pay their interest rates and the Republic to do the same. He wants no side in the war. However, it's never that easy. Dooku calls him up on the phone and tells Clovis to raise the interest rates on the Republic. Clovis obviously says no, because the interest rates for the Republic are extremely high. Dooku says if the interest rates aren't raised for the Republic, then the Separatists will never pay their debt back. So here's where things get interesting. Clovis tells Padme that he's going to raise the interest rates on the Republic. This infuriates the entire Republic and makes them no longer trust in his leadership of the banking clan, as they view him as a traitor. Count Dooku sends his forces to kill the clones that are protecting the banking clan headquarters. This is not an attack on Clovis, though. Clovis is not armed in any way, but now that the Republic knows that Clovis was going to raise interest rates, they know he's a traitor, especially since the Separatists wiped out the Republic soldiers that were stationed on that planet. So Palpatine directs a fleet to be sent to combat the Separatists. However, Dooku and the majority of the Separatist forces leave the planet, so Clovis looks like the bad guy. From the outside, it seems that he instantly favored the Separatists, but not only that, it seems as if he supported an invasion which killed all of the Republic forces, just leaving him in power. Clovis dies by falling off a building, but that's not the point. The point is that the last half dozen of leaders of the banking clan were biased in the wars towards the Separatists. So because the Republic fleet came to the banking clan, they were currently in possession of its territory. Not only that, the banking clan had absolutely no leaders as Clovis was killed and all of his associates were most likely killed or arrested, leaving the banking clan to fall into the Republic's lap because Dooku fled the planet. So why did Dooku run away? Well, the Republic thinks he left because he left a small army with Clovis and trusted him to keep things in order. But that's not the true reason, because when the Republic took possession of the banking clan, Dooku only left a small number of droids behind to defend it. The reality is that Dooku wanted the banking clan headquarters to be taken back by the Republic. The banking clan would be left in ruins and without possible leaders. He wanted this because Palpatine wanted this, because there were no leaders for the banking clan. Then the banking clan would automatically be transferred to the Supreme Chancellor, which is Palpatine.
In hope of a better tomorrow, we cede control of the banks to the office of the Chancellor of the Galactic Republic.
So now Palpatine controls all of the money in the entire galaxy. In a way, he has infinite money. Well, why does the Senate let him do this? Well, first of all, they were very upset that Clovis was working for the Separatists, or at least it seemed like it. They wanted balance in the banking clan, but clearly there was no room for balance as everyone would get corrupted by the Separatists. They decided they might as well take it. And it's not like Dooku was putting up a fight for the banking clan because he just left. Palpatine doesn't just say he's going to take control of the banking clan forever. Instead, he says that he, as the Chancellor of the Republic, will lead the banking clan. However, once the war is over, he will give up his power and the Senate can elect someone new to run the banking clan. This is another one of Palpatine's lies.
It is with great humility that I take on this immense responsibility. Rest assured, when the Clone Wars end, I shall reinstate the banks as we once knew them.
Palpatine, whenever he wants more power, will make the situation feel desperate for the Republic, but then swoop in to take the power of some entity, but make the promise that he will return the power once the war ends. The only problem is that he is running the war from both sides, so he can control and change the tide of the war at any time. This is an endless cycle. This was one of the most instrumental arcs of the Clone Wars. The Senate sticks with Palpatine because he's a strong leader. He always acts with strength. And if Palpatine thinks the Senate are questioning his strength, he will win a battle to show his power and strength. Palpatine could extend battles or make battles end quickly because of how he controlled the war from both sides. We got to find out the people behind the Separatist army. The Separatist Senate aren't the terrible people that we thought they might be. They just wanted to break away from the Republic because they believed it was corrupt and ineffective, which is partially true. However, anytime peace agreements were in motion, Palpatine would orchestrate some wild plan where the Separatists would attack the Republic, so that he could say that the Separatists don't deserve the Republic's trust and peace is pointless because the Separatists are relentless evil people. Nevertheless, there were many times in the Clone Wars where the war was close to ending, but Palpatine wasn't ready for the war to end, because the war could only end with Anakin as his new apprentice. So Palpatine would extend the war and even make some stupid decisions that would come back to bite him, all for the goal of keeping the war on track. However, all this manipulation of an artificial war would get the Jedi suspicious. The Jedi were always upset that anytime they needed to get something done, the Senate wouldn't let them, or the Senate delayed proceedings until the Jedi were desperate. Every time the Jedi had ideas to launch a surprise attack against the Separatists, somehow the Separatists always anticipated it. Every time the Republic seemed to be gaining an advantage during the war, the tides would somehow shift back to a stalemate. Through all this darkness and loss, Palpatine would represent himself as a shining light to lead the Republic out of the despair. But the Jedi started to catch on to this throughout the Clone Wars. They started to catch on that something wasn't right. To them, it didn't make sense that the Separatists were always so many steps ahead. So many of them believed there was some sort of corruption in the Senate. No one anticipated Palpatine, but the Jedi believed something wasn't adding up, and they knew the dark side of the Force was involved. However, the Jedi didn't really do anything to stop it. They believed to just trust in the system of the Republic because it will always prevail, except that the Republic's rules were being changed constantly by the Chancellor, but nobody seemed to care. Honestly, after watching the Clone Wars show 2 times, I'm not even mad about what happened during Order 66. It feels deserved for the stupidity of the Jedi. But it always felt close. It always felt during the Clone Wars that something big was going to happen. It felt like the Jedi were finally going to get the big wins, while at other times it felt as the Separatists were going to fully take over the Republic. Sometimes it went deeper than that. Many times it felt like something larger was going on, but no character could pinpoint it, and the audience was also in suspense trying to figure out what was going on, whether it was good or bad, and of course, Palpatine was always behind it, which he usually was. So in terms of keeping people on the edge of their seats, this show nails that perfectly. The intensity and the stakes always feel so high, even in the smallest character arcs. Now, Rebels wasn't positioned as an insanely serious and deep show. Rebels was positioned as a more friendly show with less confusion and directed more towards kids, who just wanted to watch some cool Star Wars. You can make this interpretation from the start of the first episode. The animation is so different. Dave Filoni was the leader of both shows, but they looked entirely different. Clone Wars animation felt more dark and gritty and realistic. Rebels takes a softer and more calm approach to its animation. The animation styles of both shows does a good job of representing the tone of each show. However, Rebels does not stay so lighthearted for long. While its animation doesn't change much, the story does darken, and plots become deeper and more confusing to wrap your head around. So what intense moments are there in Rebels? Well, of course, there are arcs where the heroes are in a situation that's dangerous, where there's no apparent way out. We get to see Darth Vader, and of course, he's a scary person. However, nothing in the first 2 seasons is really intense, except for the last couple episodes, and we'll get to that. And by intense, no plot really feels so complex and so hidden. Sure, there were episodes where my expectations were subverted. However, the feeling that it's our heroes against the world didn't really exist. To be fair, the Clone Wars first 2 seasons didn't have an overarching plot that kept the audience hooked on what would come next. However, there's a difference. Clone Wars had 7 seasons, and if 2 of them were slower and less consequential seasons, that can easily be put to the side. However, Rebels only had 4 seasons, and 2 of them are goofy, fun adventures. The original trilogy does a great job of making the Empire look scary and depicting the struggles that Luke, Han, and Leia had to go through. Rebels, not so much. Obviously, the army of the evil Galactic Empire consists of stormtroopers. So when all 4 seasons of Rebels depicts the stormtroopers as idiots, it severely lowers the intensity of the show. There were never significant times where stormtroopers harmed our heroes. Stormtroopers were easily defeated, but what about the higher command of the evil Galactic Empire? Well, we can exclude Vader and Palpatine because we already know a lot about them. So let's talk about your average Imperial officer on the show. Well, there's not much to say, because Imperial officers had no personality and looked the same, as their hats covered their entire faces, and they all believed the same thing, took the same basic steps to achieve victory. They all did the same thing. They all felt very lifeless. So watching Rebels, we got to see the Rebels fight against idiotic stormtroopers and Imperial officers that never had any bright ideas or strategies. They just followed protocol. The inevitable result of this is that our heroes seem like they're invincible geniuses, while the villains appear weak and confused, which we obviously know is not true. But what about the other villains in the first 2 seasons? The Inquisitors were the only characters that could potentially put the audience on the edge of their seat. However, a lot of times, like usual in Rebels, when a situation is just about to be a disaster for our heroes, somehow they achieve an unexpected comeback victory. Every time the plot seemed to get deep and complex, the desperation would end by a swift and honestly expected comeback from our heroes. But there was one time in particular in the first 2 seasons where I felt the intensity. There was an episode in Star Wars Rebels where Ezra, Sabine, and Zeb went to an old abandoned clone medical ship. They went to get supplies, but were quickly ambushed. The heroes sat in a dark, gloomy, abandoned ship floating above space, alongside Inquisitors hunting them down. That was one of the few times in the first 2 seasons where I felt the intensity and had the mindset of what's gonna happen next. I do think that Dave ended that story arc too quickly. However, nevertheless, it was one of the greatest story arcs in the Rebels show. Now, while that arc was really interesting because we get to experience Inquisitors hunting down our rebels, the only real intense arc that can be truly compared with the best of the Clone Wars arcs is when Ezra went to the Sith planet Malachor. These episodes on Malachor are where Ezra meets Maul and fiddles with the dark side. This same arc is where Kanan gets blinded and Vader and Ahsoka have that epic fight. In this fight between Ahsoka and Vader, we get the really only time where we see Vader in suit show visible signs of conflict. When his mask gets destroyed and he talks with Ahsoka, it really wasn't Vader that we're dealing with. That limited conversation they had seemed like a conversation between Ahsoka and Anakin. Anakin didn't have the Sith eyes and seemed as if he wanted to talk to Ahsoka and have a conversation. I think the reason that he changed back to the Sith eyes and said, "You will die," is actually Ahsoka's fault. Through all the terrible things Anakin had to go through in the Jedi Order and all the negativity and all the doubts that followed him, Ahsoka was always positive in Anakin's life, and Anakin and Ahsoka, besides a couple moments, always had the most perfect relationship. When Vader and Ahsoka had this moment on Malachor, she shouldn't have said, "I won't leave you, not this time." Because in this moment, you could see how much Vader and Anakin still cared for her, and how much she meant to him still, even after everything. But Ahsoka brought up the most negative thing that happened in their relationship, the event that ended their relationship because she left the Jedi Order. She did this because her goal was to assure Anakin / Vader that she would stand with him and help him, and as she said, she wouldn't leave him. But this instead made Vader / Anakin think about the pain he felt because of her leaving. This pain made him angry, and then he switched back into Vader mode. Another reason why Ahsoka ruined this moment was she forced him to make a choice that was not practical. By saying, "I won't leave you, not this time," implies that she would stay with him or he would come with her onto her ship, or something like that, and run away from the Empire. This is just not possible. She put herself in a bad situation. She instead could have let the tension continue. Instead, she tries to force a reaction out of Vader, and we all knew that wasn't going to work. So that was a brilliant arc in the show. The next popular arc was the World Between Worlds situation. However, I'm not going to include this as an intense arc. It certainly didn't feel intense. It felt new and interesting, but didn't feel intense. When I look back at the World Between Worlds, I am left very confused. The Ahsoka show also didn't clear anything up about the World Between Worlds. So I'm getting the feeling that Dave Filoni intentionally didn't explain how the World Between Worlds works because he himself actually doesn't know yet. I would much rather the World Between Worlds never being a thing, so therefore I will not characterize it as an intense arc. Now, while there are many other arcs in the Clone Wars and Rebels that are important, I just handpicked a few to dive into in order to get some perspective on how intense and important a Star Wars cartoon show can be. Now, I also want to mention that there is another arc in Rebels, and this is the arc where Kanan dies. And I think it's a very intense arc, and I will be making a separate video on that at some point, so that's why I'm not including it in this video. Now, let's move on to the next topic. Now, before we get into the upcoming topic that is probably the best indicator of what show is better, I do first want to talk about the last topic I brought up a little more. No, I'm not going to give you more intense arcs. Instead, I want to clarify some things for people who are wondering why I made a topic called intense arcs. See, to give you a little behind the scenes of this video, I've been writing this video for many months, and this is the longest video I've ever made, and the best editing I have done. And when I say the best editing, I mean most videos I do have a still picture on the screen for 10 seconds, and then it goes to another image. In this video, as you can see on your screen right now, I have clips from the shows that play throughout the whole video. Now, for those who don't have channels, you may not understand the difficulty of this, but for those who do have channels, you understand. Getting all these clips and making them fit is very difficult. However, for months, I wanted to make a big video and really do my best. And there's many days I take in between writing. And a fun fact is that this whole video so far, before this short behind the scenes topic, was already 90% finished before I made this show notes topic and before the rest of the video was completed. So to put that into perspective, I wrote the first 27 minutes of this video, then recorded it, then edited it, before I even started writing the last topic of this video. So I say this all because now that the first 27 minutes are completed for me, as I watch it over and over, I want to clarify why I made the intense arcs, and why I made it so long. I didn't bring it up because I wanted to compare intense arcs to intense arcs. The goal wasn't for me to bring up these arcs and say, this arc is more intense than this arc, so therefore this show is better. That was not the idea when writing, and I want to let everyone know why I did it. I made that chapter in this video because I almost wanted to give a summary of the best moments of the show. I obviously don't expect you to watch the entire show again for this video, so by me recapping intense arcs, my goal is for you to almost relive the show. In this video and in many other videos discussing these shows, you will see people, including me, extract ideas from the show, talk about things such as the purpose and impact of the shows, like I did, or talk about certain characters and certain ideas. I try to add a spin to it by me bringing up intense arcs, as hopefully you would almost relive watching the show. I gave a summary to these arcs so you would remember how you felt when watching these arcs, which is critical to your assessment of what show is better. Because as I stated in the beginning, the goal isn't for me to tell you what show is better. The goal of the video is for me to present what information I think would help you best evaluate the two shows, and from there, with that information I provide, you make your own decision. That's why I really spent a lot of time on the intense arcs, making you relive some of the best moments of the show, making your assessment of the show easier as it's more fresh, rather than just an old faded memory. Anyways, that was my reasoning for that, and a little behind the scenes of making this video come to life. One last thing I want to bring up before we get back into the third and last topic of this video is that the channel just hit 500 subscribers. This is an important milestone for the channel, so I give my thanks to those 500 people. My goal is to double that with speed, so if you're watching this video and aren't one of those 500 people, consider subscribing to help the channel get to 1,000. On to the next topic. So everything that has been discussed in this video does not matter if the show does not have an impact. You can have the greatest reasons to make a show. You can make the most intense arc in a show, you can entertain people or make people fall in love with your show, but it doesn't matter if your show has no impact. Your show needs to push boundaries. It needs to push boundaries in two ways. The show needs to change the way people make shows. People need to watch your show and think, whoa, they're ahead of their time. Not only that, your show needs to affect the overall story of the franchise, so it needs to impact the lore, the characters. It needs to have an impact on the franchise. So let's talk about the Clone Wars first. Lucasfilm, under its final years with George Lucas, was losing money. Why? Well, it's because George had a vision for the Clone Wars and wanted it to get done. So if they said, hey George, if we do it like this, it'll cost more money, he said, just do it. George wanted to make the best show out there. In terms of animation, he changed the landscape of how animated shows would be made going into the future. The Clone Wars was ahead of its time. However, how did it change Star Wars? How did the Clone Wars affect the Skywalker saga? Well, some may say it did nothing because it wasn't allowed to do anything. The show could not grow too much and have too many impacts because the show was made after the Skywalker saga was created. Therefore, characters like Ahsoka can't appear in the third movie, Revenge of the Sith. So if all your new characters in the show aren't shown in later movies, does it really push the boundaries? The Bad Batch and Ahsoka show and Rebels are all effects from this Clone Wars show. Without this show, these shows would not be possible. Characters like Ahsoka are set to change Star Wars going into the future. Ahsoka has a place in Star Wars. Where will she be during the sequel trilogy? Well, that's an interesting question. However, I think Dave will make it work and make it make sense. Ahsoka was one of the main characters of the Clone Wars. She herself is impacting Star Wars so much. Barriss Offee made an appearance in Tales of the Empire. The Bad Batch is literally about clones that fought in a war, and we saw the Bad Batch in the 7th season of the Clone Wars. Not only this, but on this channel I've talked about whether certain shows actually make the characters better and enhance the story or not. I've talked about how I think the Obi-Wan show made almost every character worse. Having your own show add up meaningful traits and value to the characters seems simple, yet so many times it's messed up by Disney. I think almost every character that appeared in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith have had more depth to their characters strictly from Clone Wars. In terms of world building, well, the Clone Wars excels at that. All 7 seasons of the show made the galaxy far away feel so much bigger and so much more important. In the movies, we see planets like Tatooine over and over again, but it makes the galaxy feel incredibly strong. However, this show made the galaxy feel huge. So many people, so many planets our heroes had so many different types of people. Anakin and Ahsoka crash, landing on random planets with small tribes. It was so interesting. Many people may have skipped those episodes and characterized them as filler. For me, though, they added so much depth to the galaxy. The world really feels enhanced based on this show. Not all is good. As much as I like the Mortis arc, if you think the whole idea of somehow your ship shutting off and you're falling asleep like in a coma and you wake up on a mystical planet with gods, it can make the galaxy feel weird. It can add unnecessary confusion. However, I will say that the Clone Wars explores so many planets, overwhelmingly making the show have a positive impact on Star Wars as a whole. Not only that, but in the Skywalker saga, it seems like we only focus on a small, select group of people. In the Clone Wars, however, we explore many species with many different lifestyles. Now let's talk about Rebels briefly. Rebels obviously didn't change the way shows are made. It didn't push the ball forward at all. It actually went back from the Clone Wars. You'll never find anyone that says that Rebels seems years ahead of its time and that it's like changed the landscape of how stories are made forever. And some can make the argument that the Clone Wars animation is better than Rebels animation, even though Rebels was made years after the Clone Wars, and I would agree with that. The animation on Rebels is very simple and very dumbed down. I think this was done to insanely lower the budget and also to fit more the kids-style show that they were pushing for. But let's talk about the actual content of Rebels. How did Rebels' characters' planet stories make it past the show itself? How did this show impact the rest of the universe? Well, character-wise, the show certainly has an impact on Star Wars today. Ezra, Sabine, and Hera all have major impact on the New Republic and all the new shows. And probably Ezra and Sabine will be shown way more and past the sequel trilogy, and whatever they do with the Rey movie or whatever. Now, did this show enhance the characters that were in it, or did it make it feel the characters worse? I think personally that the show made the characters better. While not every character was better, I think in general it was more positive. Now, if we were to talk about planets, Lothal was a great planet we visit so many times. Ezra really made it feel like home. It felt like a new Tatooine. There were a lot of cool planets, a lot of interesting things. And you did explore as much as Clone Wars, not quite, but it really did explore. But that's important, but let's really talk about how the impact made on Star Wars. But if we really want to answer the question, when you think Star Wars animated show, you think Clone Wars. Everyone knows the Clone Wars. Not so many people know Rebels. So when it comes to the impact, Rebels falls short, which is a huge weakness. While on the other hand, Clone Wars is known by everyone who loves Star Wars. So on impact, it would go to Clone Wars because Rebels really didn't have an impact in canon and out of canon. And out of canon, I'm saying general public, no one cares. So here's the outro to this video. If you've actually watched the whole thing, congrats. My personal opinion, Clone Wars all day. Always going Clone Wars. If people say Rebels, I mean, hopefully based on this video, you could understand why some people would choose Rebels. So, to end off this video, I would just say that I haven't... I had a channel update. I'm like kind of behind the scenes halfway through this. I know this is not usually how you end YouTube videos, but I've haven't uploaded in a couple months, and I was going to be honest, never upload again. But I was 5, 6, 7/8 done with this video. I had worked on this video for months and months and months. I mean, not like continuously or it would have been done because I'm lazy, but like I had pitched in every so often. I would put more into this video, and if you really made it this far, I mean, you will notice a decline in quality. I made like the first 20 minutes, I would say, around one time. I locked in. I had all these videos that would match the what was being talked about. And then towards the end, I got lazy. But I've been talking about this video for like months now. I have this big video about Rebels Clone Wars. But I wanted to finish it, to get it out there. I know I'd say the last fourth of the video isn't great, but if you're wondering, like, if I just came to finish up the video on one day, which I did, I had worked on it for months, and I'm just coming here to finish it up. how is that possible? Well, basically, what I did is I had the script. I don't know. I talked about it in the middle when I did the behind the scenes, but I had the script wrote, and after like 3/4 was done, and then the rest fourth I had the script for, and I never recorded. And then 6 months later, I just recorded over it. You can probably tell this last 5 minutes was horrific. Not horrific. I mean, the script's good, but I haven't put a lot of energy into it. I just recorded it in one take. But because the information and what I'm talking about is really valuable, but I know the screen wouldn't change for 40 seconds because I'm just trying to get this out here. This was really special to me. I worked on this for months and months and months and months. To be honest, I never finished the Acolyte. I made a bunch of videos where I was like, at the beginning I was like, I don't think the Acolyte's gonna be good, and then I seen the trailers, so I was like, actually this is looking good. I watched the first 2 episodes or 3 episodes of the Acolyte. I just stopped. I'm honest, I didn't even hate the show. I just never continued. I didn't feel like it. I haven't kept up with Star Wars at all. Now Star Wars Outlaws is coming out in a week or so. So I'm gonna play it. Am I gonna make a video about it? Probably not. Really, I really mean it. I was gonna never make a video again, and just shut off the channel. But I figured I'd finish this one because it's been in the works for so long. I've talked about it for so long, and it was really you can notice, like, at the beginning of the video, there's a lot of passion. I mean, the whole script, I put a lot of passion into the script. But in terms of editing and all that stuff, and recording my voice, there's a lot of passion put into the beginning. I haven't watched any Star Wars like I used to. It's kind of sad, man, what they've done to Star Wars. I used to watch like Star Wars movies every like month or so. I'd go watch Revenge of the Sith or Empire just by myself and just watch because I love it so much. Really fell out of love for it. I mean, of course, those movies are always still going to be there. I'm just not interested in going back right now. I haven't thought about Star Wars in forever until tonight. I just thought, since I'm never probably going to upload again, might as well just finish the video. So that's what I did. I finished this video, and but will I make a video again? I mean, I probably will. Like, maybe one video every once in a while if some huge news happens. But in terms of like, I would always like take breaks, but I would upload like 30 videos and then take a break, and then 30 videos and take a break. But in terms of that's not going to happen again. Like, I don't know if that'll never happen again. So maybe like I'll make a video twice a year, not big videos, but just videos, just to show that I'm still interested. But I made this channel in, I don't even know if I could tell here. This is not how you're supposed to end videos, especially a video that I've worked on for so long. I made this video channel in like 2021. I've had it for like 4 years or 3 years. I really when I started it, there's a lot. Really thought I could make it doing Star Wars videos, but I just don't have the time for it. I mean, I was always kind of lazy when it came to it, but I don't have the time for it anymore, like at all. I really have no time to make videos. I love the channel, like, to be honest, and I'll do this forever, is I have the YouTube Studio app on my phone. I just open YouTube Studio, and right now, as of right now, all my shorts are like blowing up. Not blowing up, but there's people commenting and stuff, so it's good to still see, and I'm still gaining subscribers gradually. But I do check on my channel, see how things are doing every week or so. It's still active. I mean, if I check, again, not how you're supposed to. I mean, I only have 50 views in the last 48 hours, but that's not horrible for someone who hasn't uploaded in months. But yeah, this is probably going to be the end of the channel. I don't know what to say. I don't know how you end these things, but I really, 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 really love Star Wars. I love Star Wars, and I really, I always knew Kathleen Kennedy bad. I always knew that they were messing it up, but I really, really had faith, and I really fell out of love for it. And I just wrapped this video up so quickly, and this was something I was thinking about forever, and I finally started making, and I really put a lot of passion, a lot of hours into this. So, I mean, is this video going to blow up? No. But one more thing I say before I leave, which I'm going to leave, is, there's a lot of Star Wars channels out there that do news, a lot to break down lore. I think I really found a a perfect spot in the community to make videos where I would analyze characters and ideas. I mean, other people do it, but I really personally, like, I always did, like, if there was a news, I would do a trailer breakdown. Those were easy. But, like, I put a lot of passion into on my playlist on my channel. It's called Star Wars Deep Dives. If you want to check it out, I'd really recommend it. It's got how many videos here? Do we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 videos in here. There's more deep dives. I just didn't put them in here, but the Clone Wars show saved the prequels. The Rise and Fall of the Mandalorian show. The Jedi destroyed themselves, not Palpatine. This video blew up. I loved making it. People love watching it. The Miserable Way the Republic Failed. People loved that one. Appreciate R2-D2 and C-3PO. I really want to give a shout out because I'm never making a video again. This is like the last thing I say on this channel is please watch Appreciate and R2-D2 and C-3PO on my channel. It's got 91 views. It was actually my favorite video ever. I really loved making it. It was really my favorite video. So if you can watch Appreciate R2-D2. I made an opinion thing where I said Star Wars would be better without the Chosen One. Animated Star Wars better than live action. And Ahsoka's importance in Star Wars. And there's so many more. But I really think when I made this channel, I wanted to find a spot for me. And it wasn't news, which I did so much of. It wasn't talking about games. It was really analyzing these things. Really analyzing Star Wars and why it's important and why things happen. And I really think I did that. And this video will go in that playlist. And then this is going to be the wrap. I don't know what to say. Fire Kathleen Kennedy. I don't want that to be my last thing. But, I really love this channel. And I really love Star Wars. But I just don't have the time. And I also don't watch Star Wars anymore. But, may the Force be with you. And thanks for watching.